Okay, so let's talk about Fujifilm's new camera. I bet Fujifilm won't like me making this video. It was already reported on a rumor website for Fujifilm a few months ago that Fujifilm was going to come out with a pro video version camera. Obviously, it could be announced later this year for release for next year, like they did with the GFX last year. But I don't know about that timetable. It could be announced beginning of next year, 2018. What it will be is it'll be a pro video version of their XT2. The rumor website did announce that, and he's not the only one with sources, that the new Fujifilm camera would have IBIS, in-body image stabilization. There are two facts, and there's only this way that it could work out. A simple deductive logic will tell you exactly what's going on, and I know what's going on. Fujifilm, by the way, came out last year with two cinema lenses, rather expensive. What are they, like $6,000 a pop? All reports are, and I don't do video, that these are excellent, like cheap, awesome versions of what are normally super expensive cinema lenses, and they came out in the Sony A mount, correct? Obviously that's easily adaptable to the Fuji X mount, so what it's going to be is a slightly larger version of the XT2. It could be the exact same size as the XT2 with in-body image stabilization, since that is obviously incredibly important for video work. And they will have their existing two cinema lenses created for, which will require no great effort on Fujifilm, with a Fujifilm X mount instead of the Sony mount, which people were kind of scratching their heads like, why did Fujifilm just come out with two cinema lenses for Sony? It's like, well, that's nice and all, but you know, Fuji's making lenses for Sony. No, they just came out with those first, and they're planning on using those on their camera. Here's the other fact. Well, the rumor website did announce that Fujifilm will have IBIS. By the way, I've taken IBIS mechanisms apart. Quite a few of them, actually. Do you know there's lubrication on those things? Do you know the issues associated with IBIS? There are issues associated with it. There's issues with cleaning. The mechanism itself, I'm not very fond of a dancing sensor. I know videographers want that, but here's how they can actually get around using in-body image stabilization in Fuji with their existing X-mount lenses, which do not have a large enough circle of projection to cover a dancing sensor. What they can have is a slight crop of the APS-C crop sensor frame. So with IBIS, you could use existing Fujifilm X-mount lenses with IBIS, with a slight reduction in crop. What that slight reduction in crop would be, I don't know, but it would be minuscule. It would be no different than the sensor stabilization that exists in Canon and Nikon. So it would be a crop of a crop sensor, technically, like when you're filming video with the Nikon D500. You can actually turn on a sensor stabilization, which is not true moving or dancing sensor stabilization, as I like to call it, but actual, where the actual image is scanned actually moves on the sensor, and that's the scanning stabilization. So it would be slightly smaller than an APS-C. However, the existing Cine lenses, which Fujifilm has two of, and they're likely to kind of come out with maybe, I don't know, one or two more for their new camera, already has a circle of projection plenty large enough to cover the APS-C crop sensor camera. So what Fujifilm, let's get to the nutshells, the brass tacks, right? So what Fujifilm is going to announce either later this year or the beginning of next year is an XT2. It could be a slight change in the ergonomics. However, I actually see no fault with the Fujifilm. The IBIS mechanism is not large. It requires like an additional 2 millimeters of clearance, and by redesigning the actual motherboard and the substrate behind the sensor and the sensor rack assembly on the magnesium chassis would be no difficult feat at all. So they could use the existing Fujifilm XT2 chassis. Fujifilm is going to come out with a pro videographer's version. I'm not a videographer. A pro videographer's version of the XT2, which should go somewhere maybe around like $2,800. I mean, it could be $2,400. I mean, the current XT2 body is $1,600. I'm guessing it's going to be between $2,200 and $2,400. What this camera will let you do is use IBIS with the existing Cine lenses, so you'll have this wonderful, beautiful masterpiece with Fujifilm quality for videography. That'll make all the video people really, really happy. And you could use existing X-mount lenses, okay, which have a fixed circle of projection, okay? You can't use those lenses on a dancing sensor without vignetting issues. They don't have a wide enough circle of projection. You could use them A, with the sensor off, or B, in a slight crop of the crop sensor itself. So in other words, you would actually be projecting on something, say 90 or 92%, I'm guessing. It could be as little as 86%, right around there, of the actual crop sensor, the Fujifilm X-Trans 24 megapixel. So it could be a 20 megapixel picture, for example. So it would be a crop of a crop sensor. Let's say 20, it should be right around like 19 or 20 megapixels with actual in-body image stabilization with this specific camera. So it will be basically an XT2 Pro. I don't know what they're going to call it. XT2 Video or I have no idea what they're going to name it. But that's the only way they can get around it. Is A, when you have X-mount lenses on it, they have the sensor not being able to be engaged vis-a-vis the firmware that's written to the camera, or B, that you're actually able to use those lenses, those X-mount lenses for regular stills photography with the sensor in crop mode, so that the circle of projection covers the dancing sensor, the physically dancing sensor. And those are the only two possibilities that Fujifilm has. Absolutely the only two possibilities. So that is what Fuji is going to roll out. And you can mark my word on it, and that's the way it's going to be. But there is no changing the X-mount lenses. They cannot handle a dancing sensor, a 24 megapixel X-Trans Fujifilm sensor, which is obviously made by Sony, as everybody knows. It can't handle that. The images will vignette. So you could either have the sensor off, or a crop, a very slight crop, not a major crop, but a crop of the crop sensor, APS-C sensor, in the camera. So those are the, and that's very logical, and it's not something anybody would bitch about. And so you would have a Super Pro version of the X-T2. And from Fujifilm's perspective, this is a brilliant idea. Why is this a brilliant idea? I'm going to tell you why. They don't have to change that damn much. The only thing they're going to have to change in the camera is some codec on how the video is actually handled. Maybe drop in some more RAM for handling the huge 4K video files. Maybe slightly better heat sinking. None of that's any big deal, and the actual IBIS mech to which the sensor is attached. So the entire 80+% infrastructure of the existing X-T2 will not have to be changed. So Fujifilm, and this is very intelligent and wise economically, very, very smart, Fujifilm, without a great deal of cost expenditure and research and development, can just drop an IBIS mech in an X-T2 with some upgrades to handle the 4K video, some much more detailed improvements into the X-T2 mech to allow for professional videographers to enjoy the camera with the professional videography cine lenses that Fujifilm is currently producing, which, and I'm not a videographer, but reports are that the lenses are not only inexpensive, but they're fantastic. So they're like a budget version of something that's super awesome. At least that's what reports are on the cine lenses, which I have not personally tested. So it's a very, very intelligent move from Fujifilm, and that is what Fujifilm is going to be rolling out. That is why, when people are scratching their heads, lashes, why Fujifilm's making cine lenses for Sony, this makes no sense. Well, it makes perfect sense right now. Perfection sense. No company just does something, with, brick wall, like blinders, like a horse in front of them. They know exactly what they're doing. They're always planning 10 steps ahead, like every other camera company does. So that's what Fujifilm's going to roll out. I'm guessing it'll be between $2,200 to $2,400, $2,500 for the camera. At least that's what it should be. It could be a little bit more. It could be, I doubt it could be less. Seriously doubt it. It really should be around $2,400 basically for the camera. But Fujifilm does not have to put a lot of money and research into the production of this beast. They already have the cine lenses. The only thing they have to do is drop in some more RAM, some new firmware, and the actual IBIS mech. I'm not a fan of IBIS. I'm not, because I know how it works. But I know videographers, they pant and drool and huff and puff over IBIS, and I know why they love IBIS, but I'm not a videographer. But anyway, but Fujifilm wants to appeal to everybody, and they know that a bunch of videographers out there I want this tiny little awesome camera made in Japan that is built really well, and you have full system integration. So Fujifilm will have this professional video device which you can do stills photography with, and it has its own lenses which are part of the ecosystem. There's the magic word in camera development, ecosystem, which means you have native camera matched with native lenses. So Fujifilm is making the cine lenses, which they already got, and they're going to make the camera now. So that is what Fujifilm's next big leap is going to be. Mark my words, that's what's going down. Okay? Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and drop me a buck or two, tell me to jump off a cliff. You heard it here first. Someone else did report on the IBIS on the Fujifilm, but you heard it here first on what Fujifilm is actually doing. And that is exactly what they're doing. It is 100% logical. He's not the only person with sources. I have sources too. And that's what's going down at Fujifilm Incorporated. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you later. Bye. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum. Ba-dum, bum, bum.